So how difficult was it kind of putting together the show at first? Because you haven't...
It was. I can't really explain how it even happened. Can you hear me? Yes. I'll start with how I even got into comedy. So last year around May, I lost one of my best friends in the whole world, Janet Ross, a very, very dear friend of mine. And that was just, like getting hit by a bus. You don't believe it, all this stuff. So that whole week, I just didn't get out of bed, just depressed. And then it was on a Sunday. I peeled myself out of bed. I made myself go to a comedy show and, saw Brett Ernst. He's an incredible comic, just crushing the game right now. And then that just kind of lifted me up, and I made a dedication to do comedy because Janet, she was always on my ass because that's all we did was laugh. Doesn't matter what we were going through. It could be the worst thing in the world. We will laugh at it. And she was always on me to get back in entertainment in some form. Yeah. I used to do acting and all that stuff back in the day. And I never did anything. I was living stagnant for many, many years. And so after she passed, I just made that vow to her that I would do it. But it took me till like October of last year to finally do an open mic. I was terrified because it's different than acting. You're playing a part, theater. It's just a completely different feeling. So I'll never forget. I got, got the balls to go do an open mic at JP's Comedy Club in Gilbert. And I remember the day of that, I'm like, this is it. This is the night. I'm going to go do it. Had, a few friends to come out to support me. And I got locked out of my condo on the way there. Keys locked in my condo, and like tried running around the back to get in. Couldn't get in. Busted down my own door so that I could make the open mic. Did it. And I felt cocky on the way there because I'm like, I could tell this story. It was so funny. And I'm sitting there watching all the other comics go up. And I'm getting more terrified the closer it gets to my name being called. Then they call Tracy Dome. I hit the stage, and it's just, talking faster than I am now, like just so nervous. I did tell the story of what actually happened, and people thought it was funny because I actually broke a nail, and it was this nail. And I'm like, no, really? I'm like, you have no idea what I had to go through to get here. They're like, oh, that's so. I'm like, no, it's not a joke. It really happened. So afterwards, I thought I was in trouble actually. So JP's wife came to get me. She's like, oh, JP would like to talk to you because my friends were there and they were being loud and obnoxious and like not the proper comedy club etiquette. They were a little lit. So then JP called me over and he's like, oh, I liked your stage presence. He's like, I want to book you for a show. And I was like, are you serious? And he's like, yeah, are you available? I'm like, okay, whatever you want. And he was like, how long have you been doing comedy? I'm like, 5 minutes. He's like, okay. So anyway, so that was my first experience. And then I ended up opening for Paul Farivar at JP's Comedy Club. And we're actually still buddies to this day. I'm going to be working with him in a couple weeks over at the House of Comedy. And we all kind of know the same people within, the comedy kind of entertainment circle is kind of small once you actually get into it. So that's how that started. So I did a few shows, but at the end of last year, I was just feeling it wasn't enough. Like comedy was cool, and it's kind of, a little ego boost when you have a good set. Sometimes but it wasn't enough. Like I wanted to help people, like my friend passed away, she was a good kid and a brilliant girl. But people go through depression. People feel lost. People, and then the aftermath of COVID, something that's frustrating for me. People don't really talk about the secondary effects. People lost their jobs. There's so much sadness and depression. And then when you look at mainstream media, they pump out so much fear. And it's like, okay, what can we do to combat that? The best thing is laughter and love, really. And so that was, I even wrote that down when I was trying to write some material. It's like, I want to do more. This just isn't enough. So it was on my heart and I didn't have an plan for it. And I had the idea, comedy for a cause. So I'm like, I don't know, that name was just in my head. So the beginning of the year, I talked about how same thing I'm telling you, wanted to do more. And then everything literally just fell into place without actually having a formulated plan, literally. A good family friend, Kristen and Adam Spencer, they lost their 2 sons. It's going to be 3 years, November 6th, which is why we're doing the show on that date. So anyway, I found out that they had put together this foundation, the HummingBird Project, which is how this all kind of came about. They showed us their presentation. They're working with DZ. He's part of the Family Vibe. He creates brands. So he's helping them create an app that's going to be available on all platforms for smartphones. So you can actually go and get resources for help, regardless of what you're going through. And their 2 sons had passed away. It's going to be 3 years ago this year from accidental fentanyl overdose. So that's how that foundation was created. There's so much more to that story. Kristen Spencer, she tells it best herself. But so I just presented the idea to her. I'm like, well, I've been wanting to put together a show for a reason, with a cause, with something like exactly what you're doing. And so she was on board with it. So this is going to be the first high profile event for this foundation. And I really think there's so much love and support behind it. It's a movement in itself. And I think it's going to go big. And I think that's something that the world needs so much right now. So literally everything just fell into place. And I reached out to my friend, Ashley Rose, who's also an incredible comic and human being. And just before, I think this is even before Kristen agreed, or I even had the idea to come to her with the show. I just wanted to produce something. And Ashley Rose was like, I'm on board, whatever you need. So she's been awesome, giving me counsel and advice on how to go about it. Anthony A. came on board. We presented the show to him, and he pitched it to the Improv. And I mean, everyone's just, that's kind of, it literally just put itself together. I had the idea, and then everybody else, anything, everyone I pitched it to just came with nothing but love and support behind it. Mm-hmm. So it's incredible. So literally when I found out that we got the venue booked, Ryan Strauss on board, got the artwork done, that day called my buddy Mike Favorman, Comedy Store vet. He's brilliant. Like, he makes your stomach hurt. Brilliant. And I asked him if he would headline the show. He's like, whatever you need. His voice. He's like, hey, you need me to headline 15 minutes? I'll crush whatever you need. I'm like, okay. So the lineup is absolute fire. I'm so excited about it. So we have Mike Favorman, Ashley Rose, Daniel. I say his last name wrong all the time. Bridgegad, Daniel Bridgegad, Tristan Bowling, and they're just, I mean, the 2 of them together are absolutely hilarious. And of course, it's going to be hosted by Anthony A., and then I'll be doing a little set on there as well. So that is that. That's a lot of information. But so November 6th, Tempe Improv, 7 p.m., and it just literally kind of put itself together, and everybody just with their support.